Uh, I mean, glad we're going to get a chance to get out there and play. Really been focused so much on the protocols and everything we need to do to make sure we do it safely. So that's probably my biggest thing on my plate. I really haven't had a chance to sit back and think about it from a bigger picture. But listen, I think we all would have chosen perfect world would have been a little sooner in the summer and whatnot. But I'm glad that piece of it's behind us. There's a lot of preparation work we need to do to, you know, from intake testing to laying out the workouts and schedule it in such a way where guys can be safe and distance from each other. So that's really the biggest piece of it. We've had a couple of calls with the staff that's going to be involved. We need to have more communication there. We were able to reach out to our players last night and give them at least a little bit of information. We have some more for them today as things are starting to clarify a little bit on the timeline here. But overall, excited to be able to get back to the reason we're all here, which is baseball.
When we talked about the role of the taxi squad, has that updated at all with you, or have you changed your mind on that at all? Will you utilize any of the young players that were maybe a little originally a little too far away from the big leagues? Have you changed your mind at all? Or players like Leody Taveras or Sherten Apostle, will guys like that possibly be on the taxi squad for this year?
Yeah, so I think those guys, the two you mentioned, most likely will be. They're on the 40-man, although we don't have to necessarily invite everybody on the 40-man. But those two guys, I believe, will be. We're still making some of those decisions. We have to submit the list of 60 players by Sunday. I don't necessarily expect we'll take that whole time, but we've basically informed a big group of players so far. We have a handful more that we need to make some decisions on. There are some guys that I think would be considered more prospects than true major league options, at least at the start of the season, on the list. I don't know how extensive ultimately will be. We have a few younger pitchers in particular that we're trying to weigh right now whether to bring them, knowing that we don't really want to see them in the big leagues this year, but it might be best for their development. On the flip side, that's two spots that we can't use for more functional reasons. So we're trying to weigh all those factors right now. There will be a handful of prospects on the roster. We're hoping that most of the young players we bring will at least factor in as options for us. If not day one, then by the end of the year.
Okay, great. I'll move back to the back of the line. Thank you.
One thing I did forget to mention was we will put video of this press conference Zoom call up on our TP site once it's over. And we'll go to Evan Grant.
Hey, John, on the 60-man thing, do you expect all 60 of those guys to already be in the organization, or could you anticipate some transactions from outside before the reporting date?
Operating right now is all 60 will be from within.
What are your plans on any additional safety protocols and whatnot during spring training? Will you guys go above and beyond what the MLB manual calls for?
Yeah, excuse me. I mean, the MLB, the operations manual is pretty extensive. We just got the final version of it probably about an hour or two ago. So I need to go through that before I could really answer your question as far as, what specifically we may do differently. But listen, I told our group yesterday, I mean, we've got kind of dual goals here, and that is that we have no one in our group needs to be hospitalized, but you know what I mean. No hospitalizations. I can't spit the word out. And we put ourselves in a position to win the World Series, and I think they go hand in hand. And we've been really diligent about explaining that to everybody here. If anybody, we will have a code of conduct that will agree upon, everybody involved with our players and staff, that anybody takes a unnecessary risk, you're putting the whole team at risk, and you're putting our health at risk. You're putting each other's family at risk, and you're also putting our team's chances to win at risk. So obviously health is the priority there, but they do go hand in hand. And we've been open longer. The office has been open for a little while, probably longer than most have. So I think we've had a little bit of practice in that regard, of being careful. I'm also very aware that this is about minimizing risk and managing risk, not eliminating it. There's really no way to eliminate it unless you're truly quarantining and not having any outside exposure. And so I think everybody understands that going into this, that there is some risk involved, and it's on all of us to take steps to look out for each other.
And then the last thing for me at this point would be, you mentioned all of that. How dire of a situation would it be for you guys, or any team really, to end up with a hospitalization or an outbreak? I mean, are you confident that this season gets played without any kind of stoppage?
Hopeful. I think we've all seen with the virus and everything that's going on, making long-term prognostic, I can't speak today, making long-term, predictions on how the path it's going to take. There are a lot of people a lot smarter than I am that know a lot more about this thing that haven't been able to do so. I'm not going to try. I'm kind of the mindset that it's not so much if there'll be a positive tests, but when, and more importantly, how they'll be handled, and have we put enough protocols in place and safety measures in place that one person getting sick doesn't necessarily mean it spreads significantly through the group, and that's where our focus is going to be. So it's going to take a lot of diligence on our part, constantly reminding each other to put your mask on, and keep your distance from each other, and there's just no need to take those risks. And I get a lot of these things can be inconvenience in the moment, but that's all they are. They're an inconvenience. And having somebody that you care about, or your family or friends getting legitimately sick and having to go to the hospital or worse, that's a lot more than an inconvenience. So I don't think we're going to be asking each other to do anything that is that hard. It's just some people, as we all know, have taken it in their own way, are a little more diligent with the cleanliness and the mask wearing and distancing, and we're gonna have to continue to remind those of us that haven't gotten into those habits already that you need to.
Great. I'll go to the end of the line. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will go to Jeff Wilson.
Hey, John. On back to this 60-player pool thing. Have you guys determined where you are going to house the 30 who are not on the club at the time? So
we're going to start all together here at Globe Life Field. We have the facilities here. We'll spread out into 3 clubhouses: the home, the visiting, and the auxiliary clubhouses. So the 60 players and the accompanying staff will be spread amongst those. It's pretty large areas, so we can distance pretty effectively. And we will likely have, not likely, we'll definitely have staggered workouts throughout the day, to where it's not going to be like spring training where 60 guys are working out at the same time. We have 2 weight rooms here and 1 weight room across the street at Globe Life Park that we'll be able to utilize and spread out. So we think we're in a pretty good spot from that standpoint. We have, it's not final. We're close to nailing that down as far as what our alternate facility will be for the taxi squad group. We have looked at a number of the college facilities locally. We've looked at the Grand Prairie facility. We looked at Frisco, and we looked at Globe Life Park across the street. I think it's most likely going to be between Frisco and Globe Life Park. We'll finalize that here probably in the next 24 hours.
And then you mentioned prospects. Are we talking like, I mean, Certain Apostle is a prospect, but he has a 40-man spot. Are you talking like non-40-man prospects like Josh Young or Huff or players of that ilk? Alex Keys, for instance.
There will be some non-40-man prospects included in the group.
And then the non-roster guys who are still on the roster, I'm assuming they're part of this spring training.
Most, not all of them, but a number of them will be.
Okay. And then my question to you regarding the fans, do you think it can be pulled off safely? Do you think it's a good idea to have fans for a player health standpoint?
Yeah, so it's obviously a really fair question. I'm not directly involved day to day in the operational decisions there. From my personal concern is less with the players, because I think the fans are going to be far enough away from the field, and nowhere near the internal player areas. For me, it's more just about crowds in general, and my concern for the fans that are here, and not just here, just anywhere. So I think we've got to take the same measures that you would want taken at the grocery store or at a workplace, where from masks and distancing and promoting the proper cleanliness. I mean, that I think is critical. I think those things are kind of non-negotiable in my mind from my personal life. So I don't think the players are so much at risk, just because of the distance involved. It's more, just when you get groups of people close to each other, that's when you have to be aware of it.
Okay, thank you.
Go to T.R. Sullivan.
John, I just want to clarify several things.
Mm-hmm.
You got 60 guys. You had 48 in camp when the shutdown happened. You expect all 48 of those guys to be back with the Rangers at least this week, at least on July 1st?
Not necessarily, TR. We have not informed all of our players of our decisions. A few that we're still in the process of making those calls. So that's why I'm not in a position to spell it out exactly. But the majority of that group will be here, but not all of them.
So there'll be some cuts, as it were, to use the old vernacular.
Yes.
So that leaves you're short of 60 players, and if you look at the internet today, there's a group of famous names. Obviously we don't know where they stand. Is there any? Are you in touch with any of these free agents that are out there? Is there a possibility you might pursue those guys?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. And you have Jesse Chavez, Jeff Mathis, Jose Trevino, and Willie Calhoun when we left spring training. I think Calhoun's 100%. Is that correct?
That whole group is 100% at this point.
So Jeff Mathis is good.
I mean, yes, based on all the feedback we have, and we haven't seen Jeff yet. So I think he's going to be in this weekend, and once he passed the intake test, the intake screening and testing, then we can do a physical assessment. But he's been working out, throwing. His hamstring has been fine. He's been running, so we don't anticipate any issues there.
And Jesse Chavez, where does he stand? Is he a candidate for the opening day roster, as it were?
Yeah, to the best of our knowledge right now, I've seen some video of his throwing. He appears to be on schedule. The his arm, he reports he feels great, so should be in a good spot.
Okay, I'll pass the baton. Thank you, John.
Yeah, the TR, just if you go off, but the one medical we have had during the one setback we've had during the break was Joely Rodriguez strained a lat muscle. This was, I think it was April. I don't remember honestly if it was April or the beginning of May, but he's here now. He came down here a few weeks ago and has been doing some physical therapy here and throwing. He did not have access to good resources there in Pennsylvania, which is where he was. He basically hurt himself throwing kind of his normal throwing program. So he's doing much better now. I don't think he's going to be ready for opening day, as it were. You know, that July 23rd, 24th opening day window. But I do think he'll be ready shortly thereafter.
Who was that? I'm sorry. Who was that again?
Joely Rodriguez.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, John.
Okay, we'll
Thank you,
go
John.
to Stephen Hawkins.
Hey, John, now that we know we're going to be playing a 60-game season, how does that kind of change the complexity of the season? I mean, you know, we always talk about a marathon instead of a sprint. And if you look at last season, heck, the Nationals wouldn't even been in the playoffs after only 60 games. So how does that change the complexion of the season?
Yeah, from that standpoint, I think it's going to be fun, you know. I mean, it's kind of like a, you know, college tournament, college C, you know, you play your best guys. I think, you know, it's a little bit more of yeah, I don't know how long you ride somebody that's struggling. Obviously, it depends who it is, but I think it opens the door for some guys that you know have some talent and put themselves in a good spot and worked hard over the course of this couple months shutdown or 3 months shutdown that we're wrapping up here. I've kind of gone back and forth on the from a depth standpoint. In some ways, depth is even more valuable because we just don't know what type of injury risk some guys will be at from not having been in true baseball shape and then having a kind of a short ramp up period. Obviously, if the virus hits and guys could be out a while in that case, and you're going to tap into depth. And on the flip side is, it's only 60 games. And so if you're able to avoid some of those injuries, you'd be in a pretty fortuitous spot.
And with that, I know that there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made. I mean, you look at rotations. Do you think we're going to see more openers this year? You look at the rules that we've got. We're going to have runners start at second base and extra innings and things like that. And you got the DH in all the National League now. What all effect do you think that has, and how much impact have y'all even had conversations about pitching so far?
A lot. I mean, I really want to credit our staff. They've there's a limit to what we could do from a distance, but I would bet that our group was in as much contact and kept regular tabs on our group as much as anybody has, if not more so. Our pitching group, I think, is in a really good spot. Knock on wood, obviously. Our starters have been able to build up for the most part to close to four ups. It's different than facing hitters, obviously. Having the expanded roster, having a number of other pitchers, combined with having a starting group that we think on most nights can get us deeper into games. It's fun, and then I do think it opens up for some of your talented younger arms that maybe you don't want to force them into a position if they're the 12th pitcher on a staff and you have to really rely on them. But if they could be the 15th or 16th pitcher on a staff to start the season and maybe have a little less pressure and get a little bit more of a runway to get them acclimated, you could be rewarded for that.
All right, man. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So we will go to Levi Weaver. Go ahead, Levi.
This is probably far too detail-oriented, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I don't think I've seen a clear explanation yet on the 60-man. Are you going to be allowed to remove guys from that list in the middle of the season for reasons other than injury, or once you submit that list on Sunday, is that it unless there's an injury? So
you do have the ability to it's going to be it's a little complicated in that, and I won't go into all of it, but you basically have to manage your active roster, which can be, start at 30, then 28, then 26, your 40-man roster, and the 60-man roster pool. And so you have to satisfy the rules according to each one. You can take players off of your 60-man roster but for 40-man players, you can outright or option them and take them off. You can take a guy off if they go on the 60-day DL will be the 45, and then you send them home. So if they're not, they're truly out for the year and they're not staying with you.
Right.
And then for the minor league players, you can take a guy off if you release him. So that's one of the areas where you've got to really be careful, because I'd love to bring a bunch of our prospects with us, but I don't want to ever get in a spot where we're forced to make a call and have to consider releasing a young player
Right.
to get him off the 60. So that's part of the reason why I think we may be a little cautious there, knowing that we can add those guys too later on, right? If we have players with outs in their contracts, we get to the end of spring training and they don't make the club. They don't make the club, and they take their out, and we release them. Now we've got a spot open, so you could add a prospect or a younger player at that point if you choose to.
And then to add a player to the active roster, they still do have to be on the 40-man. Like, you would still have to manage that. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And then my last question is, in extra innings with the runner on second base, you said it's going to be the hitter that was the last out, anyway, can you pinch run for that guy at that point? Do you know?
I think so, but I'd need to refresh myself on that.
Okay. That's all I've got for now. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got time for a couple more, so I'll go back to Evan Grant.
John, along the lines of creativity and innovation pitching wise, would you consider kind of a non-traditional rotation to start with, whether it's a 4-man or something like that, when you've got, limited pitch counts early on?
We might. One of the things I think we're probably going to do is understand what the options are, but not necessarily lock into one or the other. I think flexibility, not just with the roster, but with your strategy, is going to be pretty important, just for all the unknowns, right? And I don't want us to lock into something and construct a roster where, if somebody gets hurt or, somebody got sick with the virus, that it kind of throws it all up in the air. But, you're going to have almost a day off every week, I believe, or close to it. So I think you could look at some of those things. Again, you're going to have to, you're going to narrow the roster down from 30 to 26 between the first month and the second month. So things will change a little bit, but early on, I do think you'll have the ability to manage it that way. And not just with the starter, but I think Woody's got a chance to, really look to win games, and deploy his pitchers in the way he feels puts him in the best spot, and not necessarily have to, save somebody for tomorrow. I think just the 60 games in and of itself changes that strategy some.
And then the other baseball question I had is, I think that when camp kind of shut down, the big unknown still, or the biggest question lingering over camp, was, what do the Rangers do at first base? As you guys re-engage, do you feel like you've got answers at first base, or is that something that still has to play out in the redone spring training?
It's still got to play out. Obviously you've got Ronald and Bird. We talked about playing Frazier there some. We've talked about the possibility of other guys, bats that we want to get in the lineup, getting a look over there too. We've had some guys take ground balls over there over the last couple months. Solak, Ref Snyder, maybe some others. So I think it's a spot we have some options at, and really we're just make an evaluation here in camp, not just on that position, but the best way we can put the roster together.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go back to Jeff Wilson. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, you have a couple players with underlying health conditions. Have they indicated that they intend to play, or have any players mentioned the possibility of opting out?
No one has, Jeff, to my knowledge at this point. But something we're very aware of with the player, and not just the players, the staff, that have some medical history that we need to factor in. And so, Jamie Reed's he's the point person to manage everything on the medical side. And he's been in touch with those individuals, in some cases with their doctors, and certainly with Major League Baseball.
Okay, thanks, John.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got one last question. We have time for one more question. We'll take Pat Doney of NBC5. Go ahead, Pat.
Hey, John, I just wanted to know your general thoughts on the schedule, not knowing the order of the teams you'll play, but the competition that you will play in the NL West and the AL West. Your general thoughts on that tough schedule coming up for your team in this short stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really given too much thought to it. I mean, obviously, I'm very aware of who we may be playing in 40 games in our division, 20 games against the NL West, and so you're probably going to get, won't be an even distribution there for every club. But no, they're a talented group. They're all out in the Cactus League, so we get to see them quite a bit. Just trying to figure out when we're going to play San Diego. So I try to circle that one on the calendar and make that trip.
And then real quick, just getting past all of the labor issues that have been going on and distractions, you have a group that has been together for a while now. That core has been there. Do you kind of feel that's an advantage as opposed to other teams that might be inserting so many new players?
I don't even know if it's because our group's been together. I just think that what Woody and the staff and these guys have done over the last 18 months has been really, really unique and a lot of fun to watch and be a small part of. So that I think that more than anything, just the culture, the chemistry amongst that group in spring training was pretty unique. We had a pretty good group here working out the last few months. I didn't go down all the time, but I went down occasionally, would watch a live BP here or there, or, see, and these guys like being around each other. They genuinely like, it's not forced, it's not fake. So, from that standpoint, I think that they're going to be a little more flexible and forgiving, understanding that, people are coming from different circumstances, coming from, maybe different levels of concern. And I think it can only help us as far as, listen, we know we're going to have to roll with the punches here. We know we're going to have to be flexible. Things are going to happen over the course of the season that you don't normally factor in with baseball. It's just the way of the world and what's going on. And so I think when you have a group that likes each other, when you start from there, that's a huge advantage just in terms of guys being a little bit more forgiving and a little more empathy and a little more aware of each other.